Have you ever stopped to consider why crystals are arriving in your field? Whether you just have a few and you're getting started, or if you have hundreds and you are a crystal lover, there is a reason that the crystals are arriving to you. The crystals are evolving humanity, and they are here to activate you in ways that you may not even know. And that's what we are getting into in this episode. Hello, beautiful soul, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Sarah Bell, medicine woman, shamanic mentor, crystal wisdom teacher, ceremonialist, and your friend in all things crystals. And today we're unpacking why crystals are arriving to you. And so the first thing to know is that crystals are playing an incredible role in evolving humanity. It's no surprise that we are moving through rapid acceleration, awakening, expansion. And if you look at the last 10 years or so, the crystal market has kind of exploded. Crystals have become a trend, but it's not just about the material and capitalism. There's actually a deeper intelligence that is bringing these crystals forward in such a big way. And so more and more people are starting to get acquainted with crystals. People that maybe wouldn't normally even collect crystals or think about crystals. People that don't even have a connection to the earth are discovering crystals. And there is an intelligence that is bringing the crystals forward, connecting them with you in your home, in your personal space, coming with a deep, deep purpose. And so I have a bunch of notes here because I actually just channeled a lot of this from this Lemurian crystal, but there's a lot of this that is also coming from simply what I see. As someone who has been selling crystals for several years now, I actually get to see these sort of patterns that are taking shape in the collective field. And I can tell you one core pattern that I have seen is that crystals are arriving to support your awakening. They are supporting your expansion in consciousness. And so I want to kind of go deeper into unpacking some of this. And so first of all, when a crystal arrives, it's coming with a purpose. It is coming with a purpose. There is this ordered intelligence and harmonic that exists that is moving through the plants and the crystals and the trees. And actually all of them, all the plants, the crystals, and the trees, they are all evolving humanity. It is just, we've always been in this deep relationship with the elementals and with all of the elements, earth, air, fire, and water. We've just fallen out of relationship. We went into this deep, deep slumber and we've fallen out of relationship, but we are going through this rapid period of awakening and we are coming back into relationship as we move from separation consciousness to unity consciousness. We're starting to unify with the field of the plants and the trees and the crystals. And so the crystals are coming to you as a bridge back into unity consciousness. And so they're calling us back into relationship. But a lot of people don't actually recognize this. They don't actually see what's actually happening because they're so oriented on the physical material plane. And so there are different levels or sort of ways we could be accessing and working with the stones. And that's what I really want to activate in you in this talk. So I would love to hear your comments too as you listen in. But a lot of people are collecting with crystals collecting crystals and connecting with crystals on a physical level. So the first sort of orientation is to discover their beauty, right? It's the visual sense of just simply discovering the beauty and being in awe that the earth could create such beauty. And there is nothing wrong with just staying here in your relationship with the stones. It's this level of appreciation, this level of seeing the beauty in the world, seeing the natural wonders of the world, and getting, almost wrapped up in the joy of exploring and discovering. There's also this pattern that I see where everyone wants to know what the stones do. Right? It's like we all want to be walking libraries or encyclopedias of the stones and what they do. And so there is this real magnetism towards the mysticism that the stones carry, right? They all have these different purported properties, like rose quartz, supports heart healing, and romantic relationships and discovering deeper aspects of love in your own field. And indigo gabbro, right, supports expanding your connection with mediumship and connecting with loved ones. There are all these things that the stones do, and we want to kind of know all of these things. And I think that really comes from a place of wanting to serve, right? This place of wanting to be of service, even if that's to ourselves at first, being able to bring these stones in for our own well-being, our own wellness, and then also be able to say, I have a crystal for that. You know, when a friend might need support, and you can be the one to introduce them to a stone that supports them. And so there is this natural affinity for the metaphysical aspects of the stones. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just another layer or way that we work with the stones. But I think the thing that we have to be aware of here is that it is all mind. It is all mind. We want to get, like, if you look at every crystal book ever, like almost all the crystal books will have a section that has all the properties of the stones and what they do, right? It's like every crystal book ever. And there's, again, nothing wrong with that, but we are like being shaped into mentalizing our way with the stones. And that's just one step, but there's more, right? There's more. So there's this physical beauty. There is this mentalizing of all the properties and what they do and being drawn into the mystical aspects. And the real thing, though, is that crystals are sacred keys. And they all have their own beautiful purpose and how and why they are arriving to you. And these exchanges are happening on the energetic plane, which is beyond the mind. And it's beyond the visual, the sight, the beauty. Oftentimes, we will naturally be drawn to a stone that we need energetically, even if it is through appreciating the beauty. A lot of times, those stones are they're soul connections with those stones, those ones that we, like if you're always drawn to turquoise blue, I am always drawn to all the turquoise blue stones. It does not matter. Like, you know, like what I actually need, I will always be drawn to them. And that's because there's a deep soul connection, a soul tie to that frequency of the color. And so there are so many ways that the stones are speaking to us in frequency, which is a language beyond the mind. And they actually are opening our perceptual awareness to being able to communicate on the level of frequency. And that is ultimately the invitation. And so I want to talk about, well, let me just say a few more things about that the crystals are gateways into our multidimensional awareness, into our refined psychic senses, and our ability to perceive energy and frequency in these subtle ways, in these nuanced ways, beyond just even feeling the energetic of a stone. It's actually going into the deeper, subtle layers of the dimensional fields. The stones take us there effortlessly, but it requires us to open our perceptual senses and open our sensing abilities to be able to use them as gateways and portals into these dimensional planes. And so that is sort of the next evolution. If you're working with stones for their beauty or for their metaphysical properties or memorizing all the things they do, that is all great and wonderful. But then this is like the next step, right? It is the step into your expanded psychic senses and your expanded awareness of the multidimensional field and your multidimensional abilities as a human. Because you are so much more powerful than you are led to believe. And when you start tapping into these subtle fields, you start to open to your expanded human potential. And that is what the crystals are gateways into. They are gateways into expanding your multidimensional nature and into your higher human potential. And so they are sacred keys. They are sacred keys. And some of the stones are, how do I say it? Some of the stones have a greater ability for this. And so the stones like the Lemurians, the Starberry quartz, the celestials, right? I have all these stones in front of me. And so there are certain stones that are like, they have these expanded frequency fields, and they are holding these dimensional gates. And so as you start to grow in your perceptual awareness and your work with the stones in this way, you start discovering these really powerful sacred keys. And these are all stones that we work with inside Crystal Wisdom Codes as well. And so I want to talk about awakening for a second, because crystals arrive oftentimes when you are going through an awakening period. And it doesn't have to be this radical spiritual awakening, but a lot of times it's some kind of like big shift or pivotal period in your life, or where you're just moving through a lot of change. And so oftentimes this can come in a dark night of the soul, where you're moving through mental, emotional, or spiritual crisis. And that can be something like losing a job, or going through a divorce, or losing a parent, or even losing a pet. It can be through any kind of like really heavy emotional period. And oftentimes they will come in times of spiritual crisis. And a lot of times people are in spiritual crisis and they don't even know it. They don't even know it because they're so habituated to be in these looping patterns and to be dealing with toxicity or dealing with heavy relationships and emotional processes that they don't even recognize that they're in spiritual crisis, because it's so normalized in their field. And one of the big ones, one of the ones that I know I went through, especially back when I was in my corporate life, and I just felt like my job was sucking my soul. Not that I had a bad job or bad coworkers. It just wasn't aligned with the truth of who I knew myself to be. And a lot of times when people are in these spaces of misalignment, they are in spiritual crisis without actually even knowing it. And so the way this shows up is feeling like you're meant for more, but being like stuck. I think being stuck is that kind of classic feeling. It's where you feel like you've designed your life to sort of look like maybe what others have expected of you, but you are really seeking something deeper, a deeper meaning, a deeper purpose, a deeper way to express in a way that feels true and authentic for you. So it's this misalignment with who you know yourself to be, or who you feel like you truly are, versus this life that you've created trying to appease everyone else in your life, or by operating under the projections of others. And so that can create this real deep inner dissonance and inner conflict that is a sort of spiritual crisis, if you look at it that way. And, and so when we start to recognize that, this is one period or area where crystals will start to show up, because they're trying to call you into your true field, your true authenticity, your purity, and they're calling you into greater soul alignment. Another one is when we start to really turn towards our healing work. So this could come through like shadow work, for example. If you start looking at the inner sort of wounding patterns that you carry, you look at the repressed parts of self, you start to take an honest look, and you start to look at the things that you are pushing down or not fully dealing with, right? Maybe the toxic patterns in your life that come from these childhood wounds, a mother wound, a father wound, traumas in your life, where you really start to do that deep dive and look at what healing is needed to return to this fuller sense of self, where you feel like you are aligned with the truth of your soul and who you know yourself to be. And so whenever we start to turn toward our shadow work and deeper aspects of healing, that is another period where crystals start to show up, because they're supporting you with regulation, they're supporting you with clarity, and they're supporting you with being able to move through those heavy emotional processes to be able to find the true light within, your own crystalline light within. And another time, this kind of aligns with awakening, but it's where you start to see beyond the illusion, where you start to see beyond the physical. And so this is another kind of hallmark of awakening, where you've been orienting in this very materialistic view, where maybe the world exists with what you could see, touch, and feel, right? And then you start to awaken and recognize that there's actually something more going on here. There's something to this unseen realm, this world of energy, this world of quantum physics, right? This world of that exists beyond the visible and beyond the audible. Because in reality, we only see less than 1% of the visible light spectrum, and we only hear around 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. I think I've got that right. And then there's this expanded sound field that is beyond the audible field of what we actually hear. And so there is this whole world that is full of light and sound that we don't actually see. And when we go through periods of awakening, we start questioning, right? We start questioning what we've been taught. We question the dogmas that we grew up with, the cultural narratives that we've subscribed to, and we start looking at what actually exists beyond the veil. We start seeing through the illusion, and we start to arrive at new truths that are truths for us, for you, right? And so that's a period of a deeper awakening, and that is a time where crystals start to arrive to you, because they are helping to crystallize your field. They're helping to purify your field, and they're helping you to see and expand your perceptual awareness so that you can start to connect in with refined frequency fields and start to tap in to greater aspects of your own truth through your own experience. And so the crystals are supporting this expansion in consciousness. Consciousness is your awareness. It is what you can perceive through what you believe, what you know, how you've been raised, what you have the capacity for mentally and emotionally. You hold a certain level of consciousness, and the crystals help to expand it. And so I want to touch briefly on sort of the main dimensions of consciousness where humans hang out, which is 3D, 4D, and 5D. Maybe you're familiar with these terms. And so the third dimensional state of consciousness is really the physical. It's the material world. It's a world driven by fear and separation and the illusion, and it's very driven by logic. And the 4D state is when we start to wake up. It's where we start to question what we've been taught, where we start to try on new beliefs, right? And this is usually the period where we start to shed what no longer fits and what no longer serves. And that can be a really difficult and challenging time because our relationships might change. That's where we start to feel like our job maybe isn't aligned, and we start to look towards new things. And it can be a really confusing time and a really challenging time. And then the 5D is where we start to move into that place of unity, connection. We start to tap into this deeper understanding that everything is interconnected, and we start to see others as ourselves. We start to have more compassion because we see that interconnectedness of everything. And so the crystals are supporting these dimensional shifts and these this rising in consciousness from 3D to 4D to 5D. And when you start to make those shifts from 3D into 4D, that is really where crystals love to come in, because they're expanding your field. And crystals actually work through light codes to activate through the optic nerve, the vagus nerve. They activate and awaken dormant DNA, which is like your spiritual DNA. It's an energetic double of your physical DNA that is like a spiritual DNA. And they are awakening these dormant codes that start to expand your perceptual frequency. They're raising your awareness, and you start raising in consciousness. And so you have this broader perspective. And when you start to have that broader perspective, you can start to see in others where they are in their level of consciousness. You can start to see where you were, where others are, and where maybe you're going. And this isn't, let me just be clear, this isn't about judgment. There is no judgment. We are all where we are meant to be, and we are all needed right where we are for the evolution of humanity. And the stones are coming in, and they are helping us to remember this unity field, remember how to be in relationship with these intelligences, and remember how to communicate through the field of frequency. Frequency is the language of the new earth. It is the language of the 5D and the 6D and beyond. And the crystals are expanding our perceptual awareness and our sensing abilities to be able to communicate through frequency fields. And so the crystals hold the unity field. They don't have judgment. They don't have separation. They hold this unity field with great stability. They are frequency anchors. And as we work with them, we come into that field of stability. We entrain with them and we start to discover our crystalline nature, our crystalline consciousness. And so they arrive in these pivotal periods of awakening. And you might even have your own story of awakening aside from all the things that I shared, but they are bridges into this expanded consciousness and these expanded states of perception. And they are allies in your soul's evolution. And crystals are densified light. They are light in form. In fact, Rudolf Steiner is quoted as saying the crystals are, or in the crystals, we are looking at the gods. And I love this quote because it really speaks to the ordered perfection of the crystals. Crystals are formed with a crystalline lattice, and they have these bond angles that are mirroring or creating sacred geometric forms, which are the foundational codes of all of life. And so they hold this pure field, this crystalline field, like God consciousness in form, and they are densified light. And our soul is light. We are fractals of source. We are light. And so when we come to work with crystals and interact with crystals, it is light communicating with light. And in this process, in this exchange, we awaken to that deeper memory. We awaken to that deeper memory of self as a fractal of source. And we start to expand into this deeper understanding of self. And then in a way, this is actually an initiation into our own light and an initiation to our expanded truth of our being and who we know ourselves to be as these fractals of God, or fractals of source consciousness and light. And so this too, it helps us to, in this way, crystals help us to awaken to our divinity. They help us to awaken to our purity as love and as light in form. And so they help us become anchors, crystalline anchors in the 5D. And as we do that, we become natural light workers. We become natural like emanations. We radiate this light. And this is all happening through these exchanges of frequency. It's happening in the unseen. But here's the thing. We can actually become conscious of our work. And that is what I'm hoping to activate in you in this conversation, is to raise your consciousness around what is actually happening. Because as you become conscious and you can start to develop a deeper relationship, and you can start to become aware of all of this that is happening, and you can start to actually expand at greater levels the more conscious you become. And so crystals help us to purify our perceptual field, to discern truth and to be able to discern distortion. They help us to sensitize us to the felt sense, which is ultimately the barometer for our truth and the guidepost into expanded intuitive abilities. And they are intelligently evolving us forward in ways that we can't even see. The crystals are actually paving the way for us to communicate telepathically, which is how we used to communicate back in like the days of Lemuria, where we existed as beings of light, communicating telepathically through frequency fields. The crystals are paving our way to communicate telepathically, to bilocate, to materialize and dematerialize. This all just happens through frequency fields. And as we deepen our relationship, we start to come into this conscious awareness and we start to raise our frequency, we become more crystalline, and we start to evolve into these higher expanded states. And so the crystals are helping us to evolve into crystalline beings. They are helping us to remember who we are as beings of light. And so I want to invite you now to really look at what was happening in your life when crystals arrived. What was happening in your world? Were you going through a period of awakening on any level? And as you started to collect crystals, more and more crystals, how were you working with them? Were you actually working with them? Were you setting them on a shelf and letting them collect dust, which is totally fine? No judgment, right? Because they're still bringing this beautiful light into your field, even if they are just in your space. I always like to say crystals are like broccoli. When you eat broccoli, it's nourishing. You don't have to know it's nourishing. It just is, right? And so crystals are bringing this nourishment of light into your energy field, whether or not you know it's happening or not, whether or not it's just sitting on your nightstand or whether you're working consciously with it. And so how were you working with the stones when they first arrived? And then what shifts did you notice, or what shifts have you noticed over time? And so start to just kind of take inventory. You can even journal on these questions. It might bring in a deeper sort of aha or breakthrough. And looking at what has shifted, can you start to see these dotted lines back to the stones and kind of all of these different things that I'm pointing out? And so the key here is that crystals want to be in relationship. They want to be in relationship. And this is part of us expanding back into the field, the unity state, right? Is to start to enter into relationship with the unseen, to enter into relationship with frequency fields. And so these are all things that I teach. I help lay the foundations for you in my courses, Understanding Crystal Energy, Manifest with Crystal Grids, and Light Alchemy with Crystals. I help you to start to come into deeper relationship and actually work with your stones for expanded well-being and connection. And then inside Crystal Wisdom Codes, it's a shamanic crystal mentorship where I take you deep into building connections with the spirits of the stones and awakening your intuitive abilities, and even becoming a certified Crystal Wisdom Codes practitioner where you share the wisdom of the stones with others. And so if that interests you, check out the links below because I've provided them here. But I would love to hear from you. What did this transmission inspire in you? What are your biggest takeaways? Drop them below. Will you start to look at your stones a little differently? And can you see why your stones are arriving to you? I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thanks for being here, and keep shining.